Brendan, thank you for being on Strange Brew. This is very modern for me. So only 25-year anniversary this time.
Right. Thank you for having me, Jason. I appreciate it.
There's quite a number of territories that have taken Wheatus to heart, but I'd say that the UK is up there, and then you've got this fantastic UK tour coming up, and us Brits keep showing the love to you guys.
Indeed, we so much so that we lived there for a while in Angel, North London, 2002, 3, 4, around that time. Um, we just got very lucky with early on. I think there was a guy named Blair McDonald at Sony who, unlike what had happened in the United States, he understood what the song was and how to do it, how to show it to people. And he went with he insisted that it go on the box. Do you remember the box?
Oh
Right.
yeah. Was that the
Yeah.
music video channel?
Indeed, yeah. And it did very, very well on the box, and everybody followed from that. So I have to credit Blair McDonald with really understanding how to make Teenage Dirtbag or how to introduce it to the market there in the United Kingdom properly. And most European territories and Ireland followed at that point. So it's pretty cool what happened over there.
Am I right that you first were going to play your eponymous debut album in full in 2020, and was it scuppered by COVID? Is that right?
Indeed, it was. It was the only year besides 2009 that we did not tour the United Kingdom. We toured the United Kingdom every single year from 2001 until now, except for those 2 years. During the financial crisis in 2009, there was a cancellation, and because just nobody, everyone was losing their jobs, nobody had any money. And again, the same circumstance in 2020, right on the anniversary. So we had to regroup for that and kind of reconstitute things. Got a little bumpy there for a while, indeed. Nobody knew what was going to happen. But it was weird for us because we had planned for this 20th anniversary with the re-record of the first album, and then COVID happened and kind of janked that all up, um, and then we kind of crawled out of it over the next 2 or 3 years, touring a lot more in the United States, and a few times abroad. But then it really kicked into high gear when the 25th anniversary started to approach. So we started this 25th anniversary tour back in January in Australia, and it's been going ever since. So it's been many, many tour dates this year. Yeah, for us.
So the re-recording of your debut, that was actually not a lockdown project. It was actually something that you did before everything closed down.
Yeah, the original intent was to try and replace the masters that had been lost. There were no master tapes to that record. We wound up using what would be considered the penultimate set of tapes to re-archive and then sort of replace one instrument at a time. A complete set of the tapes not actually existing anywhere to our knowledge. Um, but it became as a forensic process of going back and looking at what we did with a lot of the same gear that we still have. It's just sat right next to me, a lot of the original studio stuff
Right.
that we made the first record with. But like I said, the process became sort of microscopic forensic thing, trying to go and find the mistakes that we'd made, trying to understand what led us to where we were so we could recreate it. And we were pretty successful in most cases. Um, some of the things we didn't do a second time on purpose because they were really truly just bad mistakes. And I think that songs like Pretty Girl and Love is a Mutt from Hell and I'd Never Write a Song About You benefited from the newer process. Then, of course, we added 10 songs that had never been released. And the reason they had never been released is because they sounded like they belonged on the first album, and we didn't want to do that over the years, so we kind of shelved them. And then a alternate universe version of album one compiled over the decades because of that. So we put that on there. So it's a 2020 song record in 2020 for the 20th anniversary.
And then go back to your live dates. You guys are known for taking fan requests and really mixing up the shows. So how will that work with playing the full album? Will you be taking requests before or after?
Nope. As we're setting up, and maybe you've seen us before, we set up our own gear, before the show. So I'll be on the stage asking the people in the front what they want to hear first, taking it from there. Obviously, album one is all on the agenda. but we're going to take it as it comes from the audience. Never have we had a circumstance where all the songs from the first album are not called. And we've also, because some of the venues are a little larger this time, we've deployed spies into the audience to walk out into the back and ask people if they want to hear something in particular, and then bring the message forward to me, just to avoid the idea that the people in the back and the people in the wings never get a say. So I'm gonna try and we have about 54 tunes that we're ready with of the entire catalog, and if I need to do some acoustic, I can. So we're me myself, I have the whole repertoire, save a few collabs that would require other people. It just doesn't make any sense to do those. But yeah, the Wheatus repertoire is all up here, and I can do the whole thing if need be. So yeah, the way that it evolved was there was this split of people who were really into album one, and then a trickle of people that accumulated over the years who were into the other records, album 4, 5, 6, album 3. And that group of people, they were more attentive at the shows and more participatory, so we began to ask them what they wanted and pepper the shows with requests. And we found out that moment where we take a request from the audience and just play it right then and there on demand had a lot more power than anything you would see on a set list. That moment of camaraderie and communication was just very, very strong. So we decided to turn it over to the audience 100%, and we have done so at headlining shows since then. That was about 2012, I think, or 13, sometime around there. So yeah, and it's only gotten better with that because now the audiences know that we do that, so they come prepared, right? So it's the coolest way to go. You're never out of sync with your audience. You always begin the conversation with them telling you how they feel, what they want, what they're in the mood for, and it goes from there.
We've discussed how the fans have taken you guys to heart and the impact of Teenage Dirtbag and your wider work, which I do want to cover shortly. But just a few weeks ago, Rolling Stone magazine listed Teenage Dirtbag in the top 250 songs of the 21st century.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah, I saw that. This is unbelievable to me. Honored to be there with so many tracks that are iconic or, super important to people. We keep getting included in these things and surprised by it all. You may or may not know that we haven't had a manager for about 20 years, and we haven't had a record label for longer than that. So Simon, our publicist in the UK, we only caught up with him very recently in our whole trajectory. So the fact that the song is out there doing those things for us without it having any guidance or parents of any kind, it's incredible that it does that for us. I don't know what to say. It's just it's the locomotive of the whole entire project, and it keeps it alive. Teenage Dirtbag is our manager.
Over the last decade or 5 years or so, you've been more forthcoming about the origins of Teenage Dirtbag. Do you think that broader understanding of the roots going back to the mid-80s and your background blinks in with that wider interest?
A little bit, I guess. A story always has a story, and my intentions for the track when I wrote it were to try and figure out what all that meant to me back then, like what all of that identified in my personality and in my tastes and in the things that I wanted to do with my life. And now it's become this thing that people kind of see themselves in. And over the years, I was reluctant to mention anything about, what a dirtbag actually was in 1984, where I came from, what the period correct vernacular would mean, because it felt a little too heavy and unnecessary, and maybe it would alienate people. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that it was like it left something sort of mysterious about the track. Teenage Dirtbag's not a single in any sense of the word. It's 4 minutes and 20 seconds long. It has this strange character exchange in the middle where the protagonist changes over to somebody else for a moment. And I always thought those things would have definitely excluded it from the category of being like pop radio single or for lack of a better term, something that had longevity or ubiquity or anything like that. I didn't expect that of it. So it all came as a surprise whenever anything happened in that regard. And I feel like there's an explanation owed to people who would care enough to want to know, so I started talking about it for that reason. And it turned out to be, I think, for some people, like the missing piece of the song, and one of the reasons they took it more seriously or were driven to take it seriously in the first place, maybe not knowing the full story, because it's a little quirky, isn't it? I mean, the track, if you just listen to it on its face, is kind of like, what is this, So yeah, I feel like that does complete the puzzle a little bit, but the ongoing longevity of the track and the survivability of it in the hearts of people who are many, many years younger than I am doesn't really matter what was going on in 1984. It matters what's going on in their lives. So that's the real long life of the song, is the way that people see themselves in it. So some weird Satan murder in 1984 doesn't really matter in that context, too much. So I didn't want to overshadow how people feel about it in any way. But if you're asking me what a dirtbag was in 1984, where I came from, and I'm going to tell you a murder story. So, and it's a true one.
But there is a thread through your music to present. Many of them have a personal element to them. Sunshine from your debut album, wasn't that about your previous group in the 90s?
Yeah, yeah, it was. I was trying to get paid for a project that I worked long and hard at, and I inevitably was not compensated properly. A record deal was acquired. I was cut out of the deal and was feeling rather salty about that, and was having lots of, protracted antagonistic phone conversations with the management team on the project, who didn't want to pay me. They wanted me to do a lot of work for free. They wanted me to sign on for $1. All this horseshit, early, dark old days of the industry, buffoonery and shenanigans. And I said no to it all rather angrily. And the tone of what would become the first Wheatus record changed from being something that was rather dreamy and emotional to something that was pretty angry and salty. And so the first record is rather sharp and snarky for that reason. And Sunshine is definitely one of those tracks.
And then going to your second album, and a lot of issues with your label at the time. And one of the elements of that, I think, was the song Lemonade. And there was a difference of opinion in terms of whether it would be released as a single.
Yeah, they absolutely hated that song, and it has done so well. we walked with the masters for that record because they didn't want it, so they gave it back to us. Can you imagine? We had recouped on our first album, and they disliked us and our second album so much that they actually gave it back to us and told us to go away. I've always kind of scratched my head at that. I think, like, wow, we weren't drug addicts. We weren't asking for millions of dollars. We just wanted to put the second record out, and it was just one of these, like, no, they didn't want any part of it. Felt quite rejected at the time, and now I feel really lucky because I know now they didn't know the first fucking thing about what they were doing, and they were about to make a mess for us, and they did us a favor letting us go like that. And, Lemonade, now all these years later, is the track that of that second record that's in our top 5 on Spotify. It gets requested every night. It's got its own legs, and it never had anything. It didn't even have a release. It didn't have a video until it was 8 years old. It was never serviced to radio, never. So it was all word of mouth with that, and I'm quite proud of the way that has survived. That's the real Teenage Dirtbag, Lemonade. It's done its own work.
But then leaving Sony just as the record industry, in terms of physical media, was about to sort of go, you kind of preempted that move to be independent, which worked out well. Creatively, you've got more independence, but also financially, you've got that direct contact with fans rather than everyone taking a cut.
Yeah. Yeah, we never benefited from, nor did we find the right management. Um, and record label wise, after YouTube and the Apple Store came online and independent distribution began to happen, it just didn't seem to make any sense to get involved with anybody else. That seemed to be something from the previous decade that we had narrowly avoided being bogged down in. So we just took our toys and went home, and it was difficult. I won't say that it was easy to be an independent artist in 2003, because it was not. But especially having been on a major label, and there's all of that sort of, oh boy, you guys, you're out of the system now. Now you're down with the real work. And the truth is that the tiny little sliver of our time was spent on a major label. It wasn't even a blip on our radar in terms of the work that we've done or how long we've been around and working on these records. So, it was weird to be who we had always been, but be perceived as something else, for a little while. And then everybody forgot, and then One Direction covered Teenage Dirtbag, and it was like, wait a minute, what even was the year 2000? Nobody even remembered. So it's just like it started over in these ways every so often. Most recently with TikTok, Quincy Jones did one before he passed, rest in peace, for Teenage Dirtbag. I mean, that blew me away. I couldn't even get my head around the notion that this man who did Thriller with Michael Jackson knew my song. Are you kidding me? Like, what even is that, So yeah, we were always a small band, and we still kind of are. And the idea that we'll benefit from some big corporate structure has never been part of our lives, really. So,
But you've also had the freedom in relation to albums like the Valentine LP, where you're able to get that narrative arc across an album and present the songs how you want to.
Yeah, and make them sound the way that we wanted. Purposely steering away from competitive, loud, sharp corners production and going towards something that felt a little bit more like a band standing in a room playing music, because around that time, everything was hitting really hard and incorporating a lot of the elements of hip hop production, which I actually like. A lot of the way the Teenage Dirtbag and our second album are made is having been a New Yorker and having had, my high school mixtapes had Metallica and Public Enemy on them, So that hip hop influence here in New York was always upon me, but I wanted to make something. When pop and rock began to incorporate all those techniques, I wanted to make something else. Go towards something a little bit more garagey, so that the Valentine LP feels like a 1960s recording or something. I used only drums that were made prior to World War One. So Civil War drums and big old church drums and things like that. Nothing modern,
Tipsy's another song that you play live quite a bit, and that was inspired by Liam Payne, wasn't it?
It was indeed. Yeah, it was 2016. That's actually from the seventh album. That's one of the songs on album 7 we have not as yet recorded, but will do in 2026. Yeah, that was I went from that sort of vintagey vibe on the Valentine LP to trying to make something that incorporated metal and jazz chords. So I've been working a lot of jazz chords into my arrangements, but trying to reconcile them with like late 80s, early 90s, sort of the period where from Justice for All to Far Beyond Driven by Pantera, like Metallica to Pantera, that little area of metal production where they tighten the screws a lot, especially on the drum sounds. I was trying to merge those two aesthetics, the metal and with the jazz chords, And the conversation I'd had with Liam that night, and I think it was 2014 at a hotel, he was sort of a pensive young man. I expected him to be much more into his moment that they were having. They were on top of the world, but he was sat thinking about and told me as much, that he was worried about their ticket prices being too high and that a lot of people who grew up the way that he did wouldn't be able to experience it, which I thought was a very deep and broad concern for a early 20 something pop star to have, So I found him to be, and the rest of the boys in One Direction, to be rather conscientious of their situation. It's a shame what happened to him, how he slipped through those cracks somehow. I can't pretend to know what went on, but as far as I was concerned, he seemed to have his head in the right place, and wrote it as much on that track.
You mentioned that jazz and a bit of metal influence, and Lullaby seems to come from that same branch.
Yeah, very much so. Lullaby is an experimental jazz metal song. It's an experiment, which is why we did it as the one that's out right now is a sort of a demo, just to see if it could be done, to see if the arrangement could be pulled off. And it comes off a little bit like, I guess, like psychedelic metal or jazz psychedelic metal. I don't want to know what you want to call it, but we were trying to find some new space there, and I think we kind of did. And I love performing that song, especially acoustic. That song comes out. We just put that out on an acoustic EP, myself and Joey and Gabrielle singing. And if you check that out on Spotify right now, it's pretty cool. It's the Restoration Studios sessions that we did. So that's our most recent release. But planning on an acoustic record next year that will flush out all those ideas with big 3-part harmony stuff. So yeah, and it's jazz. Jazz has been not experimental jazz, not avant-garde jazz, but more like the jazz used to be pop music in the 30s and 40s and in the 20s. But I'm thinking of along the lines of like Judy Garland and Somewhere Over the Rainbow, those pop standards in the jazz department, Ella Fitzgerald and so on. Yeah, jazz musicians were once pop stars. That's kind of, and the arrangements and the tunes are very accessible. I think a lot of people think of jazz these days and they think of something obscurist or peculiar, and it's not necessarily the case.
And then from your debut album, you've been known for a cover version, that being A Little Respect, but you've done quite a few others over the years. What is it about interpreting other people's music that is good to do live and on record?
It's just really fun to play a song you wish you wrote, whether it's Wilson Phillips or Rush or Mika or the Scissor Sisters or Fleetwood Mac or AC/DC or The Darkness. One of my favorite songs of all time is Growing on Me by The Darkness. I just love playing that song live and singing it with an English accent. Because you can't really sing that song unless you do it with his accent. It just doesn't sound right. It doesn't feel right at all. And he's flipped the script on that, by the way, because Led Zeppelin, the Beatles, Cream, they all sang with American accents at some point, right, to try and bridge the gap. Well, I'll have you know that Mr. Justin, what a guy. He's really flipped it and done it his way, and I appreciate that. I get a kick out of singing it with an English accent.
That links into threading everything together today, in that there's something about Wheatus that brings people from liking different types of music or different backgrounds together. You can't really categorize Wheatus, and it's just about whether you like the music rather than pigeonholing you guys into a genre.
Yeah, songs, right? Like, what do I like about Prince, Chappell Roan, Public Enemy, Metallica, Slipknot, Judy Garland? What do I like about all those artists? So it's all songs. It's all just brilliantly written little stories that have this the right crescendos and the right pensive moments, and you know, Willie Nelson, Beck, you know, I mean, D'Angelo, man. I mean, like those songs are just such well-written songs. And that's all it is, you know. Just songs, right? Tunes.
And that's what everybody will get to see and hear live when you come over to the UK. So
Hell yeah.
I've heard that tickets are selling very, very well, and lots of good things coming up.
Indeed they are. We're very excited. Our own 25th anniversary tour dates are selling out quickly. Few sellouts already. A few of the shows are actually done selling. A few have been moved to larger venues. A few are right on the edge. We still have about a little less than a month before it begins, so you can still get some tickets. And we're ending the year at Wembley with Bowling for Soup. So you can also, if you need to wait for that one, although we won't play our entire set there, the full hour and a half, 2 hours of request stuff, that's going to be Bowling for Soup's night. We're just there to support them, but we will be playing as much of that first album at the Wembley show as we possibly can squeeze into our set time. So, but I don't know when we'll be back. We might have to take a year off to get a record recorded. I hope not, but that's the way things have gone lately. It's been either on the road for 9 months at a time, or you know, trying to catch our breath in between. We haven't had a chance to do any recording, and we're trying to build that in. But this, as far as a comprehensive, you know, we've got a poly percussionist, 3 vocalists. So the size of the standard Wheatus band on this tour is 8 people. Now, a little bird has told me that Phil Jimenez from the original lineup will be joining us on some of these dates.
Wow.
So that'll be 9 people on stage performing these songs. And every little part of every little nuance is going to be honored from the recording. So we're deep in rehearsals right now for another 2 weeks, and then we head over. So it's all happening. It's about to go live.
Fantastic. Well, thanks very much. It's been fantastic to speak to you today, Brendan. And I don't think you need the look on the tour. It sounds like everything is going brilliantly well. So thank you.
Thank you, Jason. Thanks for having me on, man.
Take care.
Appreciate it.